Coming to you straight from the Rio Grande and beyond. Broadcasting to the four corners of the globe. So grab your seat, your coffee, or your sundowner.
Okay, everybody, here we go.
On point, as always. This is Gloves Off. Gloves Off.
We're back at you in Gloves Off, and I hope everybody's doing well. We have Easter week this week, and everybody's very happy. You start seeing the kids running around, try to get ready for Easter and all that good stuff. And listen, folks, it's a time of, peace and being happy, trying to be tranquil with each other. But at the same time, we live in a very conflictive world. And more so, I guess the way it's been heated up and it's getting closer to election season, you're going to start seeing a bunch of issues come arise. And that's kind of sad. But other than that, and what I mean by that is a lot of assaults, a lot of infighting, a lot of issues that can lead somebody into a conflict, a physical conflict. And so with that sense, you just have to be very much prepared. I'm here with a great friend, great brother of mine, and Grandmaster Richard Hackworth. And we've been talking for many years, but we're going to be trying to do something this year that we're going to come here periodically and answer questions that people ask about the martial arts. So this week, Grandmaster is going to say the question that was asked, and we're going to try to answer it the best way possible, in our own opinions and our own experiences. So, brother, go ahead.
Well, the question that I got was from Grandmaster Ronald Stone. And this is a guy that's been doing martial arts for over 50 years. He was a star member of the University of Illinois judo team back in the 60s and competed, at the collegiate level. And when he got into doing taekwondo and some other martial arts, he ended up in a fight, an actual street fight, and he found that there was a difference between what he needed to do in an unpredictable street fight compared to what his traditional training had been. And so in response to that, because it's not a yes or no question, I just wanted to kind of talk about why your martial arts journey needs a dose of reality. And in talking with a few other instructors, basically we've come up with about 5 fundamental reasons that people want to integrate practical self-defense into their training.
Well, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, martial arts are an enriching journey, and they offer a path for physical fitness, for mental focus, self-discipline, developing character. There is a gap between the structured environment of a martial arts studio and the unpredictable chaos of a real world fight. Because when you're talking about practical self-defense, you're going to come across situations where people are not following the rules. They're using skills or techniques that are not within the rules. And sometimes it's more than one opponent. So it's not a one-on-one competition. So when you're facing those things, your martial arts training can fall short if you're only following some traditional regimen for tournament competition. There are going to be other skills that you'll need that are going to be essential to be a well-rounded martial artist to protect yourself in the street. And I think that one of the things that I know that you're very good at your school is bridging the gap between theory and reality, because you guys do spar, and there's a lot of schools that don't. And so with traditional martial arts, often the focus is on the beautifully flowing forms and techniques, but those techniques oftentimes are for fighting against one other skilled opponent, not multiple opponents, or, uneven ground, you're on mats, so when you're in a fight in the streets, it's not the perfect environment for one-on-one combat, or even especially combat against multiple attackers. So I would say that incorporating things like the element of surprise, multiple attackers, that those things are going to help you far more in a actual street self-defense situation or an assault than if you train strictly on competition forms and in-ring sparring where there's a referee for your safety.
Well,
I was just wanting to get some of your thoughts on that.
well, number one, that's a great question, and that question is an ever-going question, not only here in the U.S., around the world. And the reason is because people have forgotten what martial arts is. They have assimilated a definition of what martial arts should be, right? Martial means war. So these are the arts of war. They really haven't changed since the Greeks or since the Romans or since the Mongols or Genghis Khan. They really have not changed. What has changed is technology. Okay, just in the past 20 years, our cameras now have a better, our phones now have cameras, and their cameras are actually better than those movie cameras that were used in 1900, in 1990 in Hollywood. Okay, so they're better definition. What I'm getting at is we use the term martial art as an artist. An artist is somebody that's bringing out an expression. Well, if I'm going to bring out my expression of what I think this should be, it's just my opinion in that base, okay? And a lot of people take those opinions and they take them as fact. And the question that you said broke into several different questions that are very viable to what is going on in the business now and what happens. I'm going to take this a couple of steps back. People come to a martial arts school. The most majority of people that come to the martial arts school come because they want to either learn how to defend themselves, or they're getting bullied and they don't want to get beat. They don't want the kids to get beaten up again. Okay? That has always been around. That has not changed. What has changed, and you're going to see this, is who's bringing in the kids to class. When I was growing up, and probably when you were growing up, my father took me to my uncle because my uncle was probably the bone roller of the town back then. Understand? So they took him to somebody that knew how to fight and was building people to learn how to fight. This happened periodically. Most essence from, I would say, 90s backward, they're going to take them to a boxing gym in the town. Then karate started coming in and the movie started playing and people started saying this is what a fight should look like. Where people forget that movies are entertainment. Fights aren't going to be that way in reality. A street fight is very, very hard. It's very, very fast. It's very, very violent. And if you start looking into those facts, the FBI stats are that it takes between 7 to 9 seconds to end 90% of the street fights. If it goes beyond 10 seconds to 30 seconds, people are either going to jump in, try to separate the fight. People are going to go to the ground, and it's going to change the perspective of the fight that goes in. Now, in today's society and in today's culture of what we have with, especially in the school systems that have become more a school to prison pipeline districts, if a young lad is walking down the hallway and somebody comes up and literally assaults him, both of them are going to get sent to either juvenile or to an alternative school, or both. That's an assault. That is not a fight. Somebody comes up to you and hits you in the street, that's an assault. You have all the right to effectively defend yourself to the level of threat. And that's what people mess up. You get somebody, and here I live in Texas, and, and I know that in Florida, here you can carry open carry. I don't carry open carry. I've always had a concealed handgun license. That doesn't mean I carry it. I've always just had it you know what I'm saying? And because it gives you that ability that once you have that card with you, you're a good citizen, because they don't give those out to anybody. Okay. And to make something that change, that kind of helps you in perspectively when it comes into if you get stopped and so on and so forth, right? But anyway, that's a difference. Here, everybody thinks, oh, I'm going to go buy a gun and I'm going to defend myself against an attacker. Well, if you've never been shooting or practicing, I guarantee you that gun's not going to help you. Understand what I'm saying? That's also an element of martial arts. And people say, what do you mean it's an element of martial arts? Because martial means war. So all those weapons of defending yourself in a combative situation have to be there. Okay? People say, wait a minute, but martial arts is not supposed to be for fighting. Then you're in the wrong place and you're in the wrong business if that's what it's about. Now, here's where it's changed, I would say, from 1975 to the present. People, colleagues of ours, have gone to schools, trained in martial arts schools, and they believe that tournament point fighting is the same thing as fighting in the street. It's not. Okay, that's why MMA and BJJ became very popular and they grew very rapidly, because if you, in the BJJ in the beginning, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, they'll come up to a person that was point fighter and they'll take them to the ground and they'll choke them out. It was a different objective, different rule. But now, as you see, once you got Dan Servin and I forget the other guy's name, started going into Ken Shamrock and everybody understanding what the goal was, the American wrestler ended up getting the advantage of, and it started becoming MMA now. Understand what I'm saying? Why? Because the objectives were different, and you know what I'm getting at. So I don't want to go back. I want to go back into the thought, and the original question is the difference between street fighting and training. If you have been trained in a certain way, that doesn't mean that it's wrong. That just means that that's what you're going to teach whenever you get into the teaching levels. And unlike everything else, right now we have the internet, and there's been a lot of martial arts throughout the world. Martial arts were usually a village system, was usually a family clan system, was a style that was developed by a country or a nation, and it was basically to defend yourself. Okay? Now, as technology progressed, the elements of war started getting better. You know how the old saying, Samuel Colt made everybody equal? Because the gun, the pistol, equalized everybody. I did not need that much training anymore to better my soldier than yours. I just needed them to be a little bit of accurate and be indoctrinated enough for me to go forward. So I hope I'm not getting out of the situation, but trying to get back into the fray of things. If you do not teach a system that was taught to you in its originality, and you're trying to teach something for a sport, the sport is not going to cross over to the street. Now, people say, Paul, you might be wrong, because you have boxing and MMA and Savate and Thai boxing that are used in the streets. Correct, because those are combative sports. So those kind of link together. Okay, and I've been studying this to its to the roots of where it has come to. how and where and what for a very long time, because that question that was answered by Grandmaster, what was his name?
Ronald Stone.
By Grandmaster Stone, is a question that's been around for a long time. If you start studying the underworld, okay, and if you start listening to what the street is, streetwise mentality, people that are in the underworld, like people that are in the mob, the mafia, they're not training in Taekwondo. They're not training in Aikido. They're not training in individuality. They're training in a hard system, in a system that's a very aggressive, very violent system. You know, a lot of people don't know that the mob boss Chin Chiganti was a pro boxer. Back then they had judo, but remember, in the street fight, you have what? Between 7 to 9 seconds. That's FBI stats to end the fight. So you need something that's very aggressive for that matter. And people say, we don't want to have aggressivity in our school. But then why are you teaching? Because once you get into a conflict, into a violent situation, you have to have that aggressivity come out. And you have to be able to control it and be able to deal with it. And if it's not dealt with, well, you're not going to be able to expound. That's my honest opinion of what I've seen through the experiences that I've seen. And I've seen this not only here in the States, in Europe and in South America, and also in Africa as well.
Well, I think you did a very good job of covering, how to bridge that gap between theory and reality. And I know personally from training in military defensive tactics and police defensive tactics, when it comes to surviving on the streets, and people that do it for a living, in their training, the priority is to develop skills for de-escalation and situational awareness. Because if you know how to de-escalate the situation or to avoid it altogether by just being better aware of what and who is around you, then you have a much better chance of survival. And there is no de-escalation or situational awareness in the traditional martial arts training, especially for tournaments, because once the referee says go or fight, then it's on. There's no de-escalating it. It's you're going from not fighting to fighting. There's no situational awareness involved. But when you learn how to identify the problems and to see when people are using certain language, they're about to become violent. And that's what gives you a chance to de-escalate it, or talk them out of it. And those should be your priority on when you first start the training. And then you're going to build your skills from being adaptability over rigid, from the traditional martial arts. You want to be able to have complex sequences of intricate skills that you can simplify and apply right away, because like you said, 7 to 9 seconds isn't very long. So you on your first strike have to be making a difference in what the outcome of the fight is going to be. And while some of the forms and things that are done in traditional martial arts might be impressive to watch, they're not particularly effective in a street encounter. Just like you said, the whole thing with the movies that they call it Hollywood foo. That the difference between movie fighting and reality fighting is huge, and you can't blend them. You can't do that movie stuff and expect to survive on the streets, because you need to be working on your natural reflexes so that you can, take action, by surprise if someone surprises you. And additionally, your practical self-defense training needs to work on exploiting openings that you adapt to. And I'm sure you're very familiar with that through Sabat, and through Kempo, that you're going to attack their openings. You're not just countering, because if your goal is to just counter their moves until you win, you're trying to do a chess match. Whereas you need to be exploiting their weaknesses, going for the openings so that you can dominate the fight and get it over with in your favor.
Absolutely. You're absolutely correct. Um, I think people start looking at, and they'll come here and they say, "Oh, you don't teach a traditional martial art." I go, "What? Savate is not a traditional art, really." It was 1803 to the present. That's before any karate school was ever open. That's before
Yeah.
judo was ever founded. That's before aikido Ueshiba was not even born yet. So it's been ongoing since then. So people do not understand the difference because they believe that the only things that are traditional are the arts that have been mass marketed in the United States. When you have a business, and I understand the business concept of it, believe me, I've dealt with it. I've had conflicts with it myself, and why. And you use a lot of the great tactics that there were, but the martial arts became a business, and it's always been a business. People have never realized that you've always been a business. And I'm going to take it back. The city in that had, now it's a lot different, right? Probably it's going to be either New York or LA, but pre-World War I, okay, World War I to the past, the city in the world that had more martial arts schools, where do you think it was? It was New Orleans. In every corner in New Orleans, you had a dueling school. Dueling school. Imagine that, dueling school. And you had it for 60 years plus, probably. And you had one of the biggest dueling masters and legends. His name was Pepe Lula. And they taught you how to duel and how to be a gentleman and how to use not only a sword, a saber, a knife, a gun. They taught you how to be a gentleman and walk through it with calmness. Okay. And people say, no, it's not true. It's true. People from New York and throughout the South would send their sons and daughters to New Orleans to learn from them. And they'll send them back into the military schools. Okay. It's documented. People say, oh, it's not. It's very much documented that this happened. Now, when you see that, people need to realize that once you have that type of martial entity, it's a lot different. The United States became a lot different. After World War I, the United States became a different power. You had boxing all of a sudden, boxing, even though it wasn't from America, it's from England, all of a sudden the Americans started becoming, how can I say, the number one in the world until present day, and depending on in what weight classes there are, but usually American boxing dominated boxing throughout, to the point that now you have several different styles of it within America, different styles of American boxing. And boxing was an art that was used to teach people not to be bullies. It was taught people that were being bullied to become better, and then all of a sudden everybody else gets higher from there. I was listening to world champion Bernard Hopkins, how he said, I went into boxing because I got tired of getting bullied. But that resonates with a lot of people. My dad took me to my uncle after I got beaten up when I was 6 years old. I'm going to be 56 now, so I'll be doing this 50 years. And people look at that and they say, oh, that's not tradition. The tradition's been around for a long time. It's not what you have been assimilated to what a tradition is now. I see martial arts schools now that, to the point that they have to pay a huge amount of money to be to have their training in their schools open. Most rents in the U.S., I can only speak to Laredo. If you have about 1,800 square feet, 2,000 square feet here, you're going to be spending on an empty space probably about between 4 to 4,500 per month. And if people come in and say, well, how come you're charging that much? When I was a kid, we used to pay $30 a class. Things have changed from $30 a class to now. Okay, so the average martial art class in the United States is between $200 to $250, depending where you're at. Okay, so I see when people say, I have to keep my business open. Yes, you do have to keep your business open. So when that happens, they start lessening the reality base. Because if you come to a school where you have to mop up the blood every time you leave, okay, you're gonna have 2-3 students. Okay, so how does that happen? You have to learn how to teach correctly and teach what your objective is. So if you want to be street reality based, you can teach that. If you want to be tournament based, you can teach that. If I want to be a combative sport based, you can teach that. If I just want to have a martial art like for longevity and have a community, you can teach that as well. So you yourself have to answer that question for you to produce the school in that element, that drive. And I think that's where we lose a lot of instructors that go to a school and they were taught something that they believed was going to save them. And then they go out in the street and it doesn't happen. Then we realize reality is a little bit different. It's not because the reality is a little bit different. It's because you were taught by somebody that was never tested, and you were taught by somebody that had never experienced that. And once you experience that, your way of thinking becomes different. I tell people, I look at martial arts like this. You're investing in yourself. You're investing, hopefully that day is never going to come that you need to use that. But the day that you use it, what money you spent for it better be well worth it, because a lot of people lose that mentality once it leaves, and then they say martial arts are no good because I got beat up in the street fight, or I went on a date and guess what? Her ex-boyfriend showed up and popped me in the face, and I'm a black belt in whatever system. That happens all the time.
Yeah, I think that I have to agree with you on that. And the other thing that comes out of traditional martial arts, when you look at the ones that are hardcore, is that those were arts of war. And the problem is some of those techniques that are taught are not legal, because when you're in a self-defense situation, the law only allows you to match force for force. You're only allowed to do just enough to escape safely. You're not allowed to pluck an eyeball out. You're not allowed to dislocate a mandible or any of those things that can be taught in some traditional martial arts, or else you're gonna be the one that ends up in jail, even though they were the aggressor and the attacker. That you have to take legal and ethical considerations when you're considering your use of force, just like police do. And that, I would say, is one of the primary differences, that you have to remain focused on escaping unharmed, not necessarily winning a fight. You just have to escape unharmed. And when you cross that line into permanently injuring, disabling, or even killing an attacker, then you are the one that is going to face the legal ramifications of the court system, because that is not allowed. This is not war. It was a self-defense situation. And I think that you probably see examples of that in the news, where somebody killed somebody because they were having an argument. You can have a disagreement without killing someone. But when people cross that line, they suffer.
Again, it's self-defense. I have to agree and disagree. And I'm going to tell you why I'm going to disagree. In a self-defense situation, you have to stop the fear. If you fear for your life, you better stop it. Okay, so it depends on the legal ramifications. Like, in other words, if if the person is backing up, you hit him a couple of times. The guy comes up and he hits you, a couple of times, and he goes, "Hey man, I'm sorry," and raises his hands. I didn't mean to call you this, blah 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 blah, whatever. And he walks back, and you continue going after him, and you take him to the ground or do whatever you got, and you keep on going in there. Yes, because people nowadays have something called a camera, which is in everybody's phone, and people are not going to stop you. They're going to film you. So if you're on top of somebody and you're pummeling them, they're going to use that against you. Like just how they use it in most police instances. They never get what started. They always get the finishing point. And people need to understand what is their law, what your law of your state allows for you to be able to defend yourself properly. And I say that again, because I'll go back to what the kids do in school nowadays. If your school district has become a school to prison pipeline district, most of them have. In other words, if your school district has a police department, believe me, it's a school to prison pipeline district. And you have your kid that's being bullied every day, doesn't want to go to school, doesn't want to get this. It's always, Mom, I don't want to go to school. That's a big indicator that your kid's being bullied at school. And he gets into a violent situation because one day it's going to explode. Boom. Maybe it didn't happen in the 3rd grade. It happened in the 6th grade. Maybe he started getting bullied in the 6th, 7th, 8th grade. It happened in the 9th grade. The day that kid that's being bullied turns around and starts hitting the bully, they're going to throw both of them into juvenile or throw the kid that was defending himself in there. That's why I tell parents, you have to document it very well what's going on. And document it doesn't mean that you pick up the phone and you yell at the teacher. You send an email to her, the principal, the school board, and you tell them exactly what it is. Especially in Texas, and I can only speak by Texas, you have laws that they can either remove the bully from the school grounds, and place them in another school in that district, or they'll move your child that's being bullied to another school in the district. Those are laws that are here in Texas. Now, let me tell you what happens there. Both of them are sent to juvenile. Now both of them are sent to, and they're both giving an assault. It's a self-defense situation. Now, if you come up in the street and you get hit in the street and you defend yourself, it's a self-defense situation. But in today's world, and you get into an entanglement in the street because you were defending yourself, you're not going to beat the ride. Both of you are going to go downtown and get fingerprinted. And then you're going to have to get a lawyer to get you out. That happens. Okay? And that's going to happen because that's the way our law enforcement is being programmed. Okay? And unfortunately, things like that happen. They happen all the time. So, and it's happening more so now. And people say, you said something about police tactics and military tactics and so on and so forth. Police tactics, military tactics, all those tactical elements that are being taught, and I'll use the word tactical. When I hear the word tactical and it's right in front of me, I go this way and continue walking. I walk around it. Okay, why? Because I understand what they're trying to do. They're trying to sell something. It's a selling point. And the police tactics, military tactics run by fads. And the fad right now is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and MMA. And it's, I'm going to take you to the ground, and in the ground, I'm going to subdue you, and I'm going to beat you up, and so on and so forth. Great, fun, great. Now, you know who did a beautiful leg takedown? And it's in video? Those two policemen that were in the subway in New York City. And they came up against against a group of guys that have been fighting in the street from Venezuela all the way up to New York. And guess what happened to them? They got their asses handed to them. Beautiful takedown. But they got shoe shined in the street. Then people are now saying, wait a minute. They beat up the police officers. 2 against 1. It's a self-defense situation, 2 against 1. And in different mindsets and different cultures, when you get 2 against 1, It's a self-defense situation when things are going to happen. Now, people do not understand that in those from the Rio Grande South, if you get stopped by the police, you're going to get heated up in the street. But they're not going to do no tactical takedowns over there. They're going to get their nightsticks and they're going to beat you up. So if you're in the street from the Rio Grande down through South America to Latin America, you better be street smart. Either you don't get involved with the police, or when the police get there, their commonality and their rule of law is the police in the dark alley is going to be taken down. And I've seen it. I've witnessed it. That's why the differences in de-escalation, like you said, is very, very well needed. And we saw that happen with those two police officers over there. It was a horrible event. Believe me, I'm not praising this whatsoever, but I'm saying if that's what you teach, to go to the street go down in the street and take somebody down, you better expect that the third party best friend is going to come over and going to kick you. And that's exactly what happened.
So I think you're right. That's an excellent example. That's an excellent example that you gave of the cops there in New York. And it makes me I want to get your thoughts on one other thing, because I think that dives deep into the area of the difference between real world training for real world threats compared to traditional martial arts, which takes place in a controlled environment, padded mats, sparring partners who follow rules. And while that might, foster discipline and skill development, it lacks the unpredictable nature of a real world attack. And so I'd like to get your thoughts on what are some of the things people can do to prepare themselves to be able to defend themselves in a real world attack where you have all the pressure of being blindsided, everything being unpredictable. And I'd like to get your thoughts on that.
Well, it's very simple. You cannot teach what you have not lived. So if you've never lived or if you've never been in situations or in that armament, there's no way you're going to be able to teach it. I can pretend to teach it, and that's what's happening with a lot of martial art instructors out there. They're pretending to teach something that they've never experienced, and it gets you in a dangerous world. And I used to teach at the college because Savate Boxe Française is part of the educational department in the state of Texas. I passed it through back in 1990, the Texas Association of Savate did. And so we did it in a way that we can teach it and kind of promote it. And I used to teach in an open gym, and right next to me was the police academy of Laredo, Texas. They used to use half the gym. And in Savate Boxe Française, Savate, Dancer, Savate, we kick to the legs. Okay, we jab, cross, kick to the legs. That's going to always be. That's part of it. That's its tradition. Savate means shoe in Old French. I'm not trying to say that it's better than anybody else. I'm just telling you the traditions that were passed on, because I was passed on traditions that I continue to pass them on. Now, if people want to use them and go, because it keeps everybody differently. And Savate means shoe. So the shoe is used as an impact weapon when you're hitting somebody. Kicking with shoes on and kicking barefooted are totally two different worlds. And we can get into that in another time. But what happens is that on the other side, they were teaching all the federal agents. And there was a teacher that she had gotten certified by a 6-hour certification, and she was teaching all the U.S. Marshals and some of the FBI agents that they needed to get their hours of whatever training they needed to get their hours on. So I'm very basic. I'm going through all my students, and I said, well, you jab, cross, front leg fuerte to the inside of the thigh, keep on going. And she yells while I'm teaching class that won't work. And she starts making fun of what I was teaching. And I had a legal class. That's my class that I had to teach. And I continued teaching. I ignored her. I did not stay there to get into an argument. So what happened is after class, they kept on going. I let everybody go, and we had an exam as well. I came back and I was grading. So she comes across with one of the guys, and she tells me that why was I teaching that it's not going to work, because what they teach was a palm strike to the face. And I said, you ought to be, are you that serious? I go, you're not even 5 foot, and you're teaching these guys that are 6'1", 6'2", that you are going to stop them. Just mass alone ain't going to work, and your badge is not going to do it. I go, I got 12-year-old kids in my school that are bigger than you, and they could care less if they respect you, but in a fight of conflict, they could care less about size. Size does matter. Back of mass matters. That's what a key point that Kempo had was backup mass. Most of the first generation Kempo guys were big guys from Ed Parker. After that, they kind of, and Kempo was a street art. I go, yes, a palm strike heel to the jaw will work. But don't you tell me that you that are 4'8", not even 5 foot, is going to do that to a guy that's 6'2". Number one, you can't even reach his chin. So you have to understand reality. So, and she kind of looked at me kind of and she's going on talking, and I left. I got scolded because I was talking to them while she was the one coming into my class, and I talked to her after class. I didn't argue in the class, and I wasn't arguing. I was answering her question in that debatable sense. The point of reality or street-wise mentality has to be taught to you by somebody that experienced that, or else you're not going to get it. If I can teach you book techniques that look beautiful in the book, and you can get a book and do this, but in the sense of reality, I can get a 17th century fencing book like a lot of people do, and they start working with a saber. Oh, they did this, and they did that, and they did this, and look how good I am. But if they were never taught by somebody who experienced that class under that instructor that wrote that, they're not going to get the emotional effect and the energy of what is being used to the fullest. Understand what I'm saying? So martial arts is coming back to that, martial art is a term that is lightly used. Martial arts means martial. It means war. Art means the expression of the combative arts, right? It's expressions of the war arts, to be specific. Then people can change it and go into different semantics. But what I'm getting at, it doesn't say anywhere there in the term martial art that you go in there to get self-fulfilled or be trying to be indoctrinated in some type of religion. Even though I'm Roman Catholic, I do not go to Savat or to a school of martial arts to become a better Catholic. I go there to become a better person. And by learning respect through the techniques that we do, I'm not going to go out there and hit you full speed. I'm not going to go out there and disrespect you in that form. That's how I'm going to learn, and that's how I'm going to teach people to respect each other and to have the discipline to become better gentlemen and ladies when they leave the school. And I think that's where we mess up in. You have a lot of martial arts now that are teaching and that they're pushing people into their religious affairs. And that's where I believe is wrong as well. So you have to be very, very careful of why and where you're going and why you're training. I guess that's my honest opinion. That's my honest answer.
Well, I know we've reached the end of our time, but real quick, I just want to tell the viewers that if because there's so much that falls under this category, if there's something you think we missed, please leave it in the comments. Let us know what you were thinking, and share that with us, and so that the other people can see your comment as well. And other than that, we'll look forward to being back answering another question on the next episode. And thank you so much for watching.
Absolutely. And one of the most beautiful traditional martial arts, it's Kyudo. So if people can find that, please do so and join, because that's a beautiful martial art. I wish we had a Kyudo section here in Texas. I'll guarantee you I will drive hundreds of miles just to learn it, because I think if that's what you're trying to do and everything else, just remember, every time you go to the gym, every time you go to your school, your dojo, your kun, or your sao, train with all the respect that you're training in, and your partner, and not try to muscle him down or hit him hard, because he's going to do the same thing, and you're not going to really learn anything. Learn the technique in its fullest. Learn what you're doing and respect that, and that's how respect is made. And I think that's where, and it earned too as well, right?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so
Okay.
much for all of that. Every time I
No,
get
thank
to
you for
be on
that.
your show, I feel like it's a free mentoring session. I learned so much. So, but
No,
thank
it's
you
good
to
work.
all the people viewing, and like I said, leave us a comment of something that I'm sure there's something we missed, and if you would let us know what it is, we'll be glad to pick it up on the next episode. Thank you for watching.
You be safe, and folks, you all stay safe, be safe, and God bless you all, especially this week. Much peace.